Welcome everyone, this is Zon with Repo Products. Today's screencast video is on Autodesk FormIt 360 and how to use some of the basic commands to start sketching for your new FormIt project. In a previous FormIt 360 video that I created, I covered the graphical user interface and I covered how to bring in a satellite image and set the location and how to create a new sketch. In this video, you can see that that information has already been set up and I need to start sketching. Some people like to work in a 3D view like this. Some people like to work in a plan view, top view. So if you want to, you can click this little icon here and it will switch to top view. In the toolbar at the very top, there are commands that allow you to work with the software. You have create sketching commands where it gives you things like simple lines and arcs and splines and rectangles and circles. You also have commands that allow you to insert basic 3D shapes already and manipulate them accordingly. So in this situation, I want to create, say, a simple rectangle and start tweaking the shape of it based upon the existing building. So I can head over here and click this cube, and then I go ahead and just place it where I want. You can see that it snaps into the position too, by the way. I am used to working in both plan and 3D mode, and a lot of people, when they're working with this kind of sketching tool or Google SketchUp or even in Revit in the conceptual massing environment, they like to work in a 3D fashion. So if you're used to that, you can switch to the 3D capability and you can press and hold the shift wheel down and press and hold your mouse wheel down and orbit like this. You can also zoom in and out with the wheel. Now that that's finished, if you use this arrow right here to select the object, um, you can left click once and it will touch the surface. If you move your mouse and depending on where you're placing the cursor on the object, it will try to find different things such as the vertice or the edge or the face, okay, or even the midpoint of a vertice as well. So in this case, I want to left click and hold on that face. And if I left click and pull, it'll start to extrude that object. And I also get the distance that is being extruded. So I can continue to push and pull like this if I want to, and I will get that length that I need. Again, I can use my orbiting functionality. Hit escape once and it will deselect that face. If I click this face and then watch where your cursor sits, you'll get a little diamond and it'll say on face. And if I just left click and pull, it'll pull that face as well. And you also get these little dimensions that are temporary dimensions that pop up. It's very similar to Revit. And you can go in here and type in a value that you want. And if you type in 80 without the feet, it assumes 80 feet. Okay, because that's just how the units are set up, but you can change that as if you need to. So using the software and the basic shapes and tools that you have to work with, you can pull and adjust. There are other shapes as well, for example, a dome and a pyramid and things like that. So really it's just a matter of selecting what you want. And if you look very carefully, it will try to place it on the face wherever your cursor is sitting. So be cautious about where your cursor sits, okay? And so I'll just place it over here just for the sake of placing one so you get an idea of what that shape looks like. If you select it after the fact, you can obviously, try to click it and move it and do things like that, or you can use the dimensions to adjust its position. If I select the pyramid, again, I can place it as well. And if I use my cursor, depending on where my cursor sits again on that pyramid, it will want to pick certain aspects. And if I use the tab key, I can actually cycle through and select different things. Now, if I want to make this larger or smaller, since I have everything selected, I can right click and I can get to things like moving it, creating it, turning it into a group, deleting it, rotating it, and scaling it. So in this case, I may want to scale it up or down. I can use this arrow and be iterative about the scale that I want. And so for example, right click, scale it, and you can actually just type in a value, say 300%, for example. And it will increase it And if for some reason it doesn't, it just has to do with its orientation and how you're positioning it to make that scale. Now, if I do need to select it, again, I can either do a window crossing like this to select it, or I can just hit the tab key until everything highlights, and then I can right click and delete it, for example. Okay. Now, just because I tab selected the entire entity, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is gone. It holds its skeleton vertices and base sketch that made it. So you may need to select everything again via window crossing and use the delete key on your keyboard to get rid of the content. Another way to start manipulating and drawing content is using these sketching tools, for example, line and arc and whatnot. So if I use this one, say rectangle, I can draw on the face of this box or rectangle over here, and I can obviously use different dimensions that I need, and it will sketch it. Now that I've done this, I can tab to select everything, and I can actually push and pull, and it will actually warp and adjust the shape of the object, as you can see here. Now, if you're pushing and pulling the object, so let's draw another box just for a second. Depending on your orientation, if you look very carefully, you need to be cautious of how you're drawing because your orientation, at one point you were thinking you were drawing on that face, but it's not. I was drawing on the vertical y-axis. Okay, so just be very cognizant of how you're drawing and what face that you're drawing on. And what helps you is the colors of the axis as well. So X is green, Y is red, and blue is up. You can change those two if you need to. Now, if I select that rectangle again, if I pull up, it extrudes and makes a solid. If I pull down into another object, it subtracts from that object. There are other, obviously, different tools that you have that you can work with as well. And then lastly, you've got some commands for joining geometry, cutting the geometry, creating sweeps and splines and things like that. We'll cover all of these other commands in another video. I want to try to keep all these videos pretty short and basic to teach people step by step some of the standard commands and not get too deep into all the commands at one time. So thank you very much for watching.